Welcome to selfdiscoveryradio.com, where the orchard of wisdom is just ready for picking. We celebrate your why, the journey that you've taken that inspires someone else. We support your services, we support your story. Come and be our guest, become a host, be an author with us. Come and see what we've got. Our next show is...
The Wellness Journey podcast series presents Spice of Life, a seasoned woman's guide to renewing her essence. On this journey, you will find all of the flavors you thought you'd lost. It's there. You have it, especially while in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. On this show, experts in the field of wellness will give you the chance to be restored, re-energized, and renewed so that you can be successful along your wellness journey. Hi, this is Lennis, and welcome to the Wellness Journey podcast series. I'm so excited about this series, The Spice of Life, a seasoned woman's guide to renewing your essence. And since this is the beginning of the year, beginning of 2019, I really wanted to interview women who I think would be inspiring with their stories, seasoned women who have gone through some things and survived to tell the story and to be able to share with you what their essence is and why they're so passionate about what it is they do and how they're passing on their expertise to women. Today we have with us someone who I truly admire because she has a remarkable story and something that really resonates with me because I have been in her shoes, so to speak, in terms of being an executive in corporate America. Gayle Guest-Brown is the author of Girl, Get It Right, an impact guide to creating the life and the work you dream of. She is an executive leadership coach, and she told me what that meant, so I'm going to make sure that we go over that so you'll know what that means. And she's also a leadership trainer, a keynote speaker, and her services include executive leadership coaching, leadership training, and keynote speaking. And also, it appears that she has basically talked with a lot of different groups within the Sacramento area and also nationally. So I'm very, very excited to welcome Gayle to the show. Gayle, thank you so much for being on the Wellness Journey podcast series. It's wonderful to have you.
Thank you, Lennis. I certainly appreciate being part of your world and part of your series. So thank you for the invitation.
You're quite welcome. You are quite accomplished with an MBA. You have your project management credential and over 30 years of experience working in Fortune 100 companies. What made you decide to leave all of that to do what it is you're doing now?
You know, after 30 years, 30 years of leadership across 5 different segments of business, not just corporate, but tech and ministry, also my own business, nonprofit world was my last assignment. And I was commuting to that job an hour each way each day. And after about 30 years, I thought, well, do I really want to continue to work for someone else or, help other women thrive? I've always been about esteeming women and lifting them up. Even when I worked for Hewlett-Packard for 15 years while I was working for Hewlett-Packard, I ran a ministry through my church, helping women and families overcome, the devastating impact of domestic violence. Got the training, got the 40-hour training, put a team together, and we just ministered through the faith community, awareness building, and also intervention into those family matters, just helping people to realize that this was an epidemic that our country was facing. It was not just them. It was not just our church, that this was a nationwide epidemic that impacted a lot of people, and that they didn't have to be so embarrassed and shamed by it. And help them to realize there are resources out there if they would only reach for them, and that gets rid of the isolation too, right? It takes there's a lot of power in the secret, and so once you release the secret, then there's all kind of help available, and so that was a big part. I ran that ministry for about 15 years, but that was after work, right? So a big part of my passion, because I too am a survivor. And
I wanted to point that out because I think it's very interesting. You have this wonderful expertise and business when it comes to coaching leaders, executives, women, on
Yes.
how to climb that ladder. And also basically, in my case anyway, when I was a leader in corporate America, how to survive it
Yes.
and thrive in the meantime. You have that expertise. You were living that life. But on the other side, you were a victim of domestic abuse. And I
Yes.
think you said something that was very interesting about shedding the light and speaking your truth. I know that, like mildew, when mildew is covered up and there's no sunlight coming in, it just grows and flourishes. But the minute you shed light on the mildew, that bacteria just curls up and dies in short order. Is what happened with you? What made you decide to shed the light on your experience?
That is an excellent analogy, first of all. I love that analogy because just bringing it into the light, right? It's embarrassing at the moment, at that time, right? At that time, I was in leadership at a corporate company, USAA Insurance. I was in leadership there. And it was very embarrassing. I didn't want anybody to know. But I'm also a woman of faith, and I knew that I deserved more. I knew, that God wouldn't have it that way. That's not why he would have his women to be treated. So I knew in my spirit that I had to do something different. It didn't start out that way, like most, like a lot of cases. I won't even say most, but a lot of them don't start out that way. But when I realized it took me a minute to realize what was going on in my relationship. I just thought it was a season that we were going through because I'd been married to him for 5 years before he began to lay a hand on me. And at that point, you're really invested, you're really in love. I thought he was the best thing since sliced bread. And then it began to shift. And it took me a while to catch up to what was really happening. But when I went to a drop-in, someone had put a card in my hand that said, hey, they have these drop-in services at Weave, Women Escaping a Violent Environment, at the time in downtown Sacramento. And I went and I heard the stories of these women around the circle, and the patterns are very consistent. I've since went on to study domestic violence and learned that the patterns are so consistent that they have what they call the cycle of abuse. And I saw that on the board and I realized that is what I had been living. And that this wasn't just situational. It wasn't just going to go away when, maybe something was going on at work, that this is bigger than that, that this was something that was going to need some intervention. And then when I realized he was starting to use drugs, then I really knew I couldn't tackle it by myself. I would need some outside intervention, and I began to reach for help. And I think reaching for help is when the light comes on, and when you stop. I still never told everybody at work, trust me, but you at least admit it to yourself, and then you reach for help with a few close friends that can help you through it, right? And so that was part of my journey. It's part of my branding. I mean, I'm a survivor. 1 in 4 women in America will, and those are just the reported cases. You know how many go unreported, but 1 in 4 women in our country will deal with this in their lifetime. As I went through it, many, many more of my friends went through it. They started reaching out to me. That's how I started the ministry. They started reaching out to me because they knew I'd gotten through it and past it and beyond it, right? And healed from it. And a lot of people want to help someone else right away. But first, we have to heal that trauma. We have to heal the impact of being in those situations. And then we can reach out to help people. I did that for many, many years. My last nonprofit job was executive director of the Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Coalition. So I went on to work in the field. Beyond volunteering, I went on to work in the field at a high level, and really, felt like I could make a difference and impact lives and families in that way. So that was wonderful. But at some point, there's such a thing called vicarious trauma. When you work in trauma every day, day after day, it's like working with painting something and not expecting it to get on your clothes. it gets on you,
Of
right?
course, I would just the energy itself begins to
Yes,
up.
yes.
And it's a very low vibrational topic. I've been studying more about vibrations, even all
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
foods and things that have high vibration. But
uh-huh.
just it's a very low vibrational kind of thing with
Okay.
so much negativity. The
There is so much, there is, I won't even call it negative. It's just life. It's real life, right?
outcome.
It's real life that happens to people every day, but you're dealing with it day in and day out, day in and day out. And so you have to give yourself a break from that. It's called vicarious trauma,
Wow.
where you are vicariously traumatized from this repeated exposure to victims who have been traumatized. So I moved further away from direct contact, and I was in a management role. And still one day on a walk, God said, you know, I want to take you to a higher level. I want you to work with, on a broader platform. And that is when I decided to go out on my own and start a leadership firm that could help women, not just domestic violence women, but women in general, right?
Well, let's talk about that, because one of the things we chatted about was that you let me know right away. I'm not a life coach. That's not what I do. You're a leader.
There are a lot of life coaches, and they're valuable.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not what I do.
It's important we understand, because I think that it's, once again, you're breaking ground, because to me that there weren't a lot of leadership coaches for women. And I know when I was in a leadership role, I didn't have anything like that, but I knew that there was a good old boy mentorship network going on with the other male counterparts. I didn't have any female counterparts. My mentor was a male, and not even a black male, a white male. So I really didn't have anyone for me to share some of my fears and some of my concerns or frustrations of being an executive, you know, the only black woman, the only woman on that level. And, you know, subsequently, you know, I ended up leaving corporate America a lot because of not having that. So what kinds of services do you provide? And explain to us exactly what is a leadership coach? What kinds of things do they provide?
It's a great question. You know, leadership coaches have been around for years, but they have typically been offered to males, men, and as a perk of leadership, as they got to a certain level in the organization, they would be given a leadership coach to help them just be their best selves, to look at blind spots they may have, but it's a confidential ally at work. You know, the Bible says, you know, 2 heads are better than one, and a strand of 3 is not easily broken, right? So, so I am both a leadership coach and I'm a spiritual woman. So I'm, you know, I bring all of that into my coaching. But a confidential ally helps you be your best self. So, you know, one of the things, I got my first coach about 2 years ago, about 3 years ago, I guess. And I didn't know they existed. And it was very valuable because, like you, I was, when women get to higher levels in the organization, they're usually the only one. If you're a black woman, you're definitely the only one. And you feel kind of isolated and lonely. You can't talk about HR things with any of your friends because they're confidential. And therefore, a confidential ally is perfect for talking about those issues at work that are sticky, that you need a second opinion on. You know, even my husband, who loves me dearly and is so supportive, you know, after a while, he's like, you know, are we talking about this again? Right? Really? Again, we got to talk about this. So, yeah, you don't have to worry about that with a coach. A coach is there. And typically, you'll meet with them every 2 weeks. You'll sit down and you'll identify some goals. They're there to help you discern your best strategies at work and be your best self. But I like a holistic approach to coaching. I like the wholeness of it, you know. So I want to know that you're aligned to your values, and that's probably where we start as a coach. What are your core values? What are some? I also want to find out their core values because I don't want to coach them to my values. I want to coach them to their values, right? Okay. So we want to make sure that there's alignment and there's balance in their lives, and that you know, there's an alignment between that professional life and that whole life. They're not just focused on world to the exclusion of everything else in the world, their family and their kids and their husband. And so, you know, coaching, I just found it very valuable for me. And, you know, I want to be there. I'm all about esteeming women and helping women to discern their best selves and stand in their power. Because, you know, there's nothing more beautiful than a woman who understands her value, stands in her power, speaks her truth, right?
Yes.
And it's hard to do that in a world where no one looks like you at work, you know. And, you know, there are implicit biases that happen at work as well. Sometimes people aren't even aware of the biases that are coming from their mouths and in their actions. And having someone to negotiate that with, that those biases you face at work, that's also very valuable. Because a coach gets to know the details. You know, the people you tell your friends, you've only got like a half hour to tell them something, and then they're like, okay, can we talk about something
Exactly.
else?
How many times did I experience that?
Right?
I just stop. It's kind of like, Linus, okay, we're going out to lunch, but I'm telling you right now, we're not going to talk about your business. Or we're not going to talk about work.
Right?
Right. And I'm like, okay. You know, because I really need to be able to get it out before I went back into the trenches.
Yeah, and process it, right?
Right.
And have another perspective. And because I've worked in 5 segments of business, I've seen a little bit of everything, right? There's probably not too much I haven't seen. And that's helpful too, because I'm a little bit further down the road than maybe some of the younger ladies that I'm coaching.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because many of the people who watch or listen to our program are women over 40, and probably even more specifically between 45 and 50. Given that, if they are like in the, mid-level management, let's say, and they're still wanting to work their way up the corporate ladder, what kinds of things do they need to be thinking about? What kinds of things would you work with them on to help them achieve their goals?
Yeah, one of the things that I find in women in middle level management is they've been very successful. They've gotten there a certain way, but they need to realize that what got them there won't get them there to executive level management. There's a huge gap in our country, across our country, in executive leadership, right? Getting to that, bridging that gap from middle level management to executive leadership. And so executive presence is something we work on, right? Confidence and dressing a certain way. And how do you report out, and who do you report to? Who knows what you're doing, right? Finding a sponsor in your organization. Now, here's the deal. I didn't say mentor, because women typically have mentors. A sponsor knows you so well that they can speak to your abilities in that room when the next jobs are being talked about. They're higher level. They're senior level managers that know you so well that they can speak to, oh yeah, Linus can do that. Yeah, oh, I think she'd be perfect for that job. That's the difference in men and women in corporate America. Women have mentors, men have sponsors. And those sponsorships go beyond work. They go to golf, they go to dinner, they know that person, right? And so one of the biggest things my mid-level women do is they work hard. They work really, really hard. And they think this is it. This is all you have to do is work really hard. No, that's not enough. You can't just work really hard. That's got you there, but that won't get you here. Here is about networking and profiling and people, and being more strategic, and your presence, your executive presence.
Well, here's a question for you, because this is a debate that my friends and I have had, and I've been gone for corporate America for 10 years. One of the things I say is that, first of all, I would never dress the way I dress now, because I work for myself. I talk about wellness. It's kind of holistic, and as some of my friends say, woo-woo. So, you know, I kind of get to be eclectic in my appearance. One of the things that I decided to do right away, and it was really a health reason, was I stopped dyeing my hair, because I developed an allergy to hair dye maybe about 5 years before I left corporate America. But I still kept dyeing it, and would just suffer the consequences of going to ED, because my, scalp was oozing. I mean, I would look like a Gila monster. Would have to work from home for a couple of days until everything.
Wow.
To the point where one day my doctor's like, Linus, this isn't worth it. Why are you doing this to yourself? And so I began to let my hair go gray. And like about 2 years or so after, in that time it was just strands. Now it's the whole head. But after I left corporate America, I felt so much more comfortable with the gray. While I was there, I kept feeling like I had to do that. Now, I looked a lot younger than my age. I still look younger than my age. I'll be 62 in June. But back then, I was in my 50s. But I looked like maybe I was in my late 30s. And I know that they knew I was older. But that gray kind of kept that myth going, that
right.
younger. So, given that, and the fact that there are women who are older who are still working in corporate America, should they die or should they not die?
That is a personal reason. That is a personal decision. But I tell you what, corporate America, and depending on where you're working, if you're working in tech, they're less image conscious, right? They just want you to get the job done. If you're getting the job done, that's all that matters in tech. I swear I could go to an HP with my shirt on backwards and nobody would notice.
Right.
Nobody's even looking at you, right? It's what you're producing and what you're developing. But in corporate, when I worked in corporate America, they were very image conscious, suits every day, hair done, straight, of course. But that was back then. Times are changing, Linus. So you notice how many natural hair commercials there are.
Yeah.
Okay. On these are commercials. So this is a sign of the changing times. So natural hair is, that used to be the corporate. You had to have straight hair if you wanted to go up, right? But not anymore.
I took my flat iron to work. Yes.
Right? So no, times are changing. You don't have to do that anymore. We just now have to liberate our minds that allow us to think that looks good now, right? Now we have to just liberate from all of those messages.
That's interesting if you said that. So from a confidence perspective, I guess it's based upon whatever feels good to you in your body. I always tell women in general that if it feels good within your spirit and your body and with your mind, then do it. If there's a disconnect there, then don't, because that's that esoteric message is coming to you telling you, you know what, this isn't a good fit for you. It might have been for Lulubelle, but it's not for you.
Well, here's another take on that, though. When we grew up with those messages. Straight is better, lighter is better. Maybe it's time to change our mind, right? Maybe it's time to change all of those messages that we've internalized.
Okay.
All that, okay? And so, it's still hard for me when I let my hair go natural. It's been so ingrained in me. It's still hard for me to see that as professional, right?
Exactly.
Right? And so, but that's me. That's what I'm telling myself. If now advertisers are paying for us to have natural hair on television, times have truly changed. It's time to take the shackles off the brain. Right?
Exactly. That's a very, very good point. And
so it's changed. But, and with regard to gray hair, I think America is still youth focused. So on the job in corporate America, I don't care what industry I was in, it was all about being youthful, right? And so gray hair, although it's a crown of glory and a crown of wisdom, it depends on what market you're in. In counseling, you could get away with gray hair. They want you to be wise, right? In coaching, wear your gray hair. They don't mind.
In the field of wellness, yes.
Yes, wear it. I mean, they want the wisdom. It's a sign of wisdom. But when you are in corporate America, and I just left corporate America 2 years ago, or social justice field 2 years ago, they're still weighted toward youth. So you have to look at your circumstance and what field you're in and discern what's going to work for you, right? But I say it's personal because it's a decision on whether you want to be true to yourself. Like you had to make that decision. Am I going to make myself break out in allergies? Or am I just going to let this happen, right?
Right.
That's a personal decision. You could have kept doing that, right? But it wasn't healthy for you. And this is just me, right? This is just who I am. And I'm going to let the chips fall where they may. Even though the corporate culture here might be about youth, I'm going to be youthful, but I'm going to be me. And I understand that decision too.
Yep, I absolutely do understand both decisions depending on what your priority is. But I do want to encourage women, though, for women who are working their way up the corporate ladder and feeling isolated, don't have a mentor or a sponsor, and need a leadership coach to get them to where they want to be. I want to highly suggest that you take a look at Gayle Guest-Brown and her programs. What is your website, and where can they go to find out more about you?
It's easy. It's Guest-Brown I.M.P.A.C.T, I.M.P.A.C.T.com. And there are a number of packages already out there. So I do a 3-month, 6-month, and 12-month package. And, the pricing is already out there for you to see. I offer a significant discount if you pay up front. And you are, if you, I'd hate for anyone who needed help not to be able to get help. So if that's something you need, call me and let's talk about payment plans, right?
Fantastic.
But women are starting to reach for help, like you mentioned before we got on. They know, especially when they're working in fields where they're isolated. Maybe they're male-dominated fields, or they're isolated and lonely. They're not getting the support they need to be successful. And that's my sweet spot. I love it. I love coaching. So I also do speaking and I do training. And training is a lot of fun. I enjoy training too.
Well, I just want you to know that if I had run across someone like you 10 years ago when I left corporate America, I might have stayed maybe a couple more years.
I know.
But there just wasn't anything available. That's why it's just so wonderful to have you on the show and for you to share your expertise. And again, for those of you who are interested in getting in touch with Gayle Guest-Brown, and I would say that you should, if you're in corporate America and you're in the process of managing your career, you want to check her out. You want to go to Guest-Brown I.M.P.A.C.T. Is that correct? GuestBrownImpact.com. And please, also, she did offer something. She said for 90 minutes of coaching for $90 if you mention this podcast, the Wellness Journey podcast. So call and take advantage of that great pricing. Gayle, thank you so much. Oh, let me say one more thing. For people who want to get Girl Get It Right, and they can get that at Amazon.com. Is that the best?
They can. Okay. They can get it online at Amazon.com.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the Wellness Journey podcast series. It's been wonderful to have you today.
Oh, Linus, we're going to have to stay in contact.
Oh, we will. We definitely will.
All right.
Please, you stay in contact too. Make sure you come back next time for the next episode of the Wellness Journey podcast series. We are right now in the series of Spice of Life, a seasoned woman's guide to living. I'm missing that up. A seasoned woman's guide to renewing your essence. Spice of Life, a seasoned woman's guide to renewing your essence. Thanks so much for listening. For those of you who are on iTunes and iHeartRadio and Stitcher and Spreaker and all the different platforms we're on. Thanks for listening. And thank you, YouTube and Self-Discovery Network, for listening also as well. It's been wonderful to have you, and we'll see you again next time. Join me next week as we dive into other ways on how to live in a way that is beneficial to your mind, body, and spirit. Till next time, keep that spice of life candle burning.
For more wonderful shows like this, please go to selfdiscoveryradio.com, podcasts, and see our lineup. And if you wish to support us, we have a funded button. Please stay tuned for our next show.